Hey, before I kick off the podcast, I just want to shout out Next Door Clothing. Next Door, a clothing brand based out of Bondi in Sydney. They're making really nice jeans and shirts and hats. So go and check out their full range at nextdoorsydney.com. They're also artists, so you can go and check out a range of art. They put on rad parties, and I love what they're doing. So nextdoorsydney.com for the full range.
I'm having a good time.
You are?
Yeah.
I can tell.
We are rolling too.
Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Today's guest is Gregory Stock. Greg was born in central Minnesota and is the youngest of 6 children. He is a husband, surfer, educator, storyteller, smoothie lover, coffee lover, and he plays the gamelan and likes to hang in hammocks. Ice hockey, baseball and football filled many hours in his formative years, as did working and playing on his grandparents' dairy farms. His elementary and high school teachers included many Benedictine nuns, monks from a local abbey and convent. And he was inspired from an early age by their values of self-sufficiency, simplicity and social justice. His university studies brought him to both St. Paul, Minnesota and the University of Vienna, Austria. He majored in both English and German and discovered an affinity for numerous German philosophers and the ethic of practical idealism. The ensuing decade found him at various locales, such as teaching in Jamaica, working in outdoor education in Minnesota, driving city buses in Oregon, serving as a host at a mountaineering base camp in California, and studying in India. For the past 2 decades, he has worked as a high school literacy, social studies and physical education teacher in both Bali and Hawaii. He holds a graduate degree from the University of Hawaii in Asian Studies and Library/Information Sciences. From the moment I met Greg, I was immediately drawn to his warmth, kindness and approachable demeanour. He's one of those people who walks into a room and you just kind of feel like everything's going to be all right. I think we have all met someone like that. He's a big man with a big heart. In fact, he's so big, a stand-up paddleboard is his go-to option in the surf. And it might be the only time that actually makes sense to me that someone should write a sup. Just kidding, suppers. But seriously, the ocean is Greg's happy place. He's the big chief, in my opinion. Today, Greg is with me to share his journey, experiences, challenges, and hopes for the future. Gregory John Stock, welcome.
Thank you, Shannon. I really appreciate you having me, and I really appreciate this podcast. I think it's a nice gesture to share people's biographies and a way to get to know them.
Is that what it is? When two people, like when I sit down and have a conversation with someone and want to hear their story, is that a biography or an autobiography? It's a biography.
I guess if I tell it, then it's my autobiography. But
if I tell your story, it's an autobiography?
You mentioned that I'm a storyteller too. I mean, I think part of it is just story, the story of the human life, and we all have such fascinating lives. So I just honor the fact that you make time, give people this space and avenue to share their story or their biography or their autobiography, whatever we want to call it.
Oh, thanks, brother.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
And I appreciate it too.
Sometimes I question my intelligence. I know I'm not dumb, but I'm like, I don't know. Sometimes I just forget. Like, what's the difference between a biography and an autobiography? I just had that thought right then. Anyway.
Well, I don't question your intelligence, Shannon.
Thanks, bro.
I know you well enough.
Oh, man, thanks. My wife does, but let's not go there. Oh, man. So, like, give me an update. Like, how's the last week of your life been? What have you been up to?
Last week of my life.
Or even even today? Like, what's news?
Oh, life is great. I'm living in Bali, which is a place I really love. I'm doing a teaching stint here for the second time, but my wife and I have been coming to Bali for about 20 years. We really resonate with the people, the culture, the land, the ocean, So many aspects of Bali are just great, and I won't name names, but in the last few weeks I've discovered a new quiet surf break on my sup. Which
Name names.
Can't name names, I'm sorry.
Come on, man.
But that is, like I said, that is my happy place, and it's been nice to find a quiet space where I can enjoy that, and I love my teaching. I think it's a real gift when you can do something you love, and even after a couple decades of it, I love being around adolescents and the challenges and the joys that bring, and I love teaching social studies in particular because I think we live in challenging but exciting social times where, it's fun to examine.
I think social studies is very pertinent to, the real world, and that's why you like teaching it, because it's relevant, it's significant, it's now. It's more engaging for the students, would you say? Because they're talking and learning about current affairs?
Definitely, and I think the challenge as the teacher is to come with the right questions, and hopefully after doing it as many years as I have, I've gotten in touch with some of those questions, and have learned many of those questions from the students over time, so I know what they resonate with. But I just find the teenage years, they're still questioning, and they're still very open to ideas, and so to help them practice articulate communication as well as active listening skills, it's just it's fun to be around that every day, and I appreciate my work.
Yeah, you're a teacher, obviously, but what do young people teach you? You kind of mentioned it, that they're inquisitive, but what are some lessons that you have learnt from young people? I could relay some of my own.
One thing I appreciate, one thing that comes to mind immediately, and I think of some of my current students, is a sense of humor. That, Green School students, it's a school with an ideal for sustainability and for addressing current global environmental and social justice concerns. And our students really take that on and really try to live their idealism. It's amazing some of the practical idealism we've seen students take up at Green School, but they enjoy themselves. And I think for me that's helped keep me young, if not physically, at least emotionally. And I feel young at heart being around them. Yeah,
I agree. I feel like it keeps me young. It keeps me sort of a little bit in touch with what's cool as well.
I don't know if that does that for me.
I don't think I'm cool at all, but I'm actually, some of those conversations outside of the classroom is where I find a lot of magic happening. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's we'll have a light bulb moment with the student in terms of a learning outcome. Sometimes it's they tell me something cool they did on the weekend. And then sometimes it's they tell me some musician that I've never heard of before, and they're like, you should listen to them, they're rad. I'm like, okay. And I do. I'm like, yeah, that's sick. And then also fashion. You see what they wear, and I'm like, oh, so that's cool again. Because it feels like fashion goes in cycles. Even at the moment, baggy denim, blue denim jeans that are super wide, that's what I was wearing in the early 90s as a young skateboarder in downtown Nowra. These big baggy jeans, and now they're cool again, and it's this early 90s fashion is back. I'm just okay, right, I'm back.
You know what's come around again, even for me, is musically I felt a bit out of touch, and as you know,
I don't believe it.
Shannon allowed me to teach polka dancing, which relates to my roots of music, but I'm also a child of really the 70s and early 80s, and one of my favorite groups is the Grateful Dead. But most of our students aren't in real touch with that, and lately the music I've been hearing coming from the music building is is very jazzy, and it's kind of nice as the old guy on campus to think, hey, I love the music they're making, because it hasn't always been the case.
Are they banging out like really long psychedelic jams?
It's jazzy. Let's just say it's jazzy, and they're exploring, I think, just their musical capabilities. And
have you seen the Grateful Dead live?
Oh yes, yeah, many times.
Greg, was it at a festival?
Let me think. My first time was in Alpine Valley in Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah?
And it was quite eye-opening because I have rural roots from Minnesota, and so the music I grew up on was American country. That's what my dad had on in the background all the time. And I actually still love that music. When I say American country, from the 60s and 70s, the Johnny Cashes and Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, I still love this music very much and listen to a lot of that too. I love the sound of a steel guitar and banjo. And, so that's morphed. I've lived in Hawaii for almost 20 years, and I love Hawaiian music, but it has much in common, I think, with elements of that older American country, as does reggae. We might even find similarities with Gamelan, maybe.
Well, yeah.
Music is universal.
Exactly. I mean, you've lived and worked in Jamaica, so you enjoyed reggae?
Definitely.
And then you've lived and worked in Hawaii. You have to excuse me because I've been horrendously sick again with a sinus infection, and I'm finding it hard to breathe at times.
Which probably affects the thinking too sometimes.
Yeah, oh man, I've had a really tough month actually, health-wise. I don't get sick all that often, and then the last month I got horrendous fever. They thought it was dengue fever, and then I got hit with this really heavy tropical flu bug. But just keep going. There's this quote, I don't know who said it, might have even been my grandmother. She said, if you don't want to be sick, don't act sick. I don't know if it actually works, but I've just kept going and try to go to work every day, even when I'm sick, and surf, and I think it's actually wearing me down, and podcasting and all that.
I know I've encouraged you privately to take a few days off, and I don't think I still encourage that, and I'm glad the sickness bug has avoided me so far in Bali, but sometimes the best thing is just the rest and the fluids, and give yourself permission for that.
Thanks, man. Thanks for giving me permission, Big Chief. You're kind of like a big chief. I don't know why. I always look at you like, he's the big chief, because you're kind of a big physical man. Surfer, Hawaii, and I know you're not Hawaiian, but I just look at you and go, he's Hawaiian. You've got that vibe, size. And I like calling you Big Chief. Do you mind me calling you?
I don't mind being called Big Chief.
But anyway, listen, I went off on a tangent. So where I was going before is like, you identified with the traditional music of Jamaica, traditional music of Hawaii. And I know you've been coming back and forth to Bali for 20 years, and you've obviously been drawn to the people and culture. And you actually said that as well at the start. And you have learned and continue to learn the Gamelan.
Yes.
So, okay, can you tell me a little bit about it? So, I have a base understanding, but what is the Gamelan and how is it played?
Well, the Gamelan has roots not only in Bali, but also in Java, and it's a little bit difficult to describe to the Western ear. I think for Western sensibilities, we can think of a xylophone and gongs and brass instrumentation, and there are different kinds of gamelan music, even just within Bali, often very different from village to village. And fortunately for my wife and I, where we live in Hawaii, there is actually quite a connection to gamelan. So there was a Javanese orchestra of instruments that was donated to the University of Hawaii in Honolulu about 50 years ago. And then closer to about 30 years ago, an orchestra of Balinese instruments. And all those are still there. So when I was a student of Southeast Asian Studies at the University of Hawaii, I began playing because having traveled to Bali many times, my wife and I were just drawn to the music. And it's often part of temple ceremonies, and we're drawn to those here too. And it's considered music that is, at the temples, it's played for the gods. And if you hear the music, for us, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but for us, we love it, and we think the gods love it. And
but can you be more specific? Like, why do you love it? What do you love about it? Like when you're doing it, what are the feelings that you get from it? Does it put you in like a trance?
No, I wouldn't call it that, but I think all musicians would say that to make music with other people does bring us to a place, whatever we want to call that, a zone, let's call it. We synchronize with each other. I think that's a nice way to put it. And with Gamelan, it's, it has specific beats, so it's not a kind of music where we, at least with the traditional Gamelan, we go and off on jazzy tangents where we jam individually. We play as a group, and these beats are synchronized, and some of the instruments are much faster. My wife tends to play those, and she enjoys the challenge of those. I tend to resonate more with
the bass.
The bass.
Really?
I like playing the gong or the jagogan. These are slower instruments.
I picked it, bro.
Yeah, and often in the Gamelan orchestras that we see here in Bali, those are the guys who sit in the back and maybe smoke their cigarette or kretek while they play, and then every 64 beats they wake up to hit the gong. I don't mind being more active than that, but I just love being part of the orchestra, and even as we build up to a date of the performance, the challenge that comes with that, and being your best, being focused, that's a good challenge. And yet just doing it as a group is fun socially, and I think all the reasons that people like music. But I love the sound, so to go to practice and listen to that is wonderful. And my wife practices currently very rigorously, and it's a lovely thing in the evening when I'm swinging in my hammock to listen to her practice. It's
I love
great.
what you said. It's the synchronicity, and obviously that would connect you with the other people. And if it's traditional music, it is literally connecting you with the local people and culture. And I guess it's like cultural immersion, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So cool, man. Would you describe yourself as like a social justice warrior? Because I know that's a really extreme term, but I just get this sense from you that you are very much about people. Would you agree with that?
Yes, people, and I think the environmental justice.
You also seem like you like to advocate for I guess disadvantaged and maybe minority groups. Would you agree with that one too? Because I sort of just get that sense that you're drawn to simplicity and those that maybe have less but are happier. And I've just always sort of felt that with you from the moment I met you. And maybe you could tell me like why you are drawn to those sort of things.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks. As we were talking about music, and you talked about the music I love, I just do have to go back to Minnesota and the polka and the country that I get back to Minnesota every year, and that is really...
Oh, the polka. I love it.
I turn on the radio right away, or if I go out with friends, that's what we share. But, getting back to Minnesota and some of the places that have shaped me, I lived in a rural area, and my folks had 6 children. My father worked for over 40 years in a paper mill. Worked really hard to support us. My mom also worked, and she's an incredible seamstress. She can sew anything. So growing up, she sewed all of our clothing, and we were by no means a wealthy family, but it could be called middle class, whatever that means. We had enough food on the table, but I think growing up in a rural area, I'm sympathetic to farmers. It wasn't always easy. I have a lot of family in the farming industry too, and back when I was growing up, that was hard for some people. Many people were having to sell their farms, but then, my first job out of college was in a rural village in the Blue Mountains of Jamaica, and that had quite an influence because by Western standards, the people were considered poor, as measured by GDP and these things. But actually, in living up there, many of these people were descendants of slaves who actually escaped from places like Spanish Town and Kingston and went up and made a livelihood in the hills and farmed. So a lot of people living very close to the land in simple dwellings, but some of the healthiest, happiest people I've ever met. Imagine growing all of your own food, vegetables, chickens, goats, and I was only there a short time, but it certainly had an influence on me and my values. And when I left there, I went back to Minnesota, and I also had a chance. My next job in coming back was working with the Native American community, the Ojibwe in St. Paul. And I worked at a youth shelter for, young people who were struggling. But, my colleagues there were generally Native Americans and Ojibwe, and all the children were. And so that opened doors to that culture and community, but also to, some young people that maybe didn't have some of the gifts that I had growing up, and were faced with some real challenges. So I guess that led me to work, in my 20s with adjudicated youth in outdoor education, and maybe that relates to what you're asking, where...
It does. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, you don't have to be from like a middle / in Australia we call it working class to be like attracted to those kind of things. Mm-hmm. But it does seem a little bit more common. I think that maybe there's some empathy has been built in younger years. I don't know if you agree with that, but I'm curious to know about your early years. Like, say you grew up in a rural area, and then you went to elementary school in central Minnesota.
Yes.
Can you maybe describe your elementary years? Like, how was school? Like, what are your memories of being a child student?
You know what I really remember? In looking back, I'm so grateful because I was given a very happy childhood, and I don't think that's true for everyone. The first thing that comes to mind is actually not school, but after school, because I lived in a neighborhood with many children my own age, and particularly the boys. We all loved sports, and from after school until dark, we would play the sport of the season. And that was just very satisfying. It was, filled with play, and school was Catholic schools, and some people have stories of mean nuns, and
I was going to ask that.
And I don't really have those stories. I did see a nun or two lose their temper pretty badly, but I've seen that in every school setting. And I think you mentioned it in my biography. The Benedictine stream of the Catholic religion really has some nice values to their order that I appreciate. So, living there in rural Minnesota, you think it's just cows and corn out there, but they had values that were impressed upon me at a young age. Like the nuns, I remember, were big proponents of the nuclear freeze movement.
Really?
And so as a 10-year-old boy going to schools, they didn't preach that to the 10-year-old, but I saw what they were advocating, from their convent, which was right in the middle of my hometown.
It's actually not. Sorry to jump in, but it's
please.
Actually nice to hear someone reflect upon their Catholic education fondly. Mm-hmm. I'll be honest. I too often hear people reflecting on their Catholic education negatively.
Yeah,
like it was a very fearful time in their life, and sometimes worse.
Yeah.
So that's really cool, And did you find like they were quite staunch with their beliefs, obviously religiously, but then they would also advocate for other issues quite staunchly as well? To an extent?
Maybe to an extent, and maybe I was somewhat separate from it as well, because as an elementary school student, I was focused on, throwing a football around in the backyard. But I did go to a high school that was, many Benedictine monks were involved with that.
Sorry, excuse my ignorance, but
Yeah.
what's the difference between a Benedictine monk and is there a non-Benedictine?
A non-Benedictine. Well, there are different streams within the Catholic Church. You might say there are Franciscans, Dominicans,
Okay.
Jesuits,
Sorry, again,
Benedictines.
I feel so ignorant asking that.
No, and I'm sure many people listening to this, if you hadn't asked the question, they would want to know and would have to look it up themselves.
The tough questions,
hey,
Greg.
if you don't grow up as a Catholic, I think it's a fair one. A fair one to ask.
Yeah, so so you weren't at a boarding school. It was at an elementary Catholic school, and then you transitioned to high school?
Yeah, and the high school was actually, so we had a convent, which is for nuns in my hometown, and then a few miles from my town out in the country, there was a high school that was connected to the abbey, which is where the monks live, the men. And some of the monks worked at the high school that I attended. And so some of those similar values were there. And I would say, as a teenager, I was maybe more ready to have some of my ideas challenged, just as...
And were they?
Very much so. And I do think when you talk about an appreciation for social justice, I would say that some of that is the Benedictines rubbing off on me. And they also had a value of self-sufficiency. So things like
you grow your
beekeeping.
Grow your own food.
Yeah, and, harvesting maple syrup in the falls.
Dude, do you know how to do that?
I've done it, yeah.
Is that where I've heard that they just put a tap in a tree.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Well, it's a little more complicated than that. There is some boiling and distilling that occurs, but...
They tap the tree, and then whatever comes out of that, then they boil it and distill it.
Yeah.
Do they add sugar?
No need.
It's all natural.
I mean, there are some who add sugar, but you don't want sugar in your syrup or your honey.
Well, because it's sweet enough.
Yeah, plenty.
You're sweet enough.
Exactly. I don't need sugar either. Better we all stay away from sugar, yeah? Go with the natural stuff.
In my nutrition studies class, I'm doing a whole study on how evil sugar is. And we're watching this documentary called That Sugar Film. Have you heard about it?
I'll be honest, Shannon, for those of you that don't know the school where we teach, it doesn't have walls. We work in a bamboo structure. I teach right next to Shannon. So while I was teaching right next to you yesterday, I heard the whole movie.
Was it too loud?
No, I would have told you if it was too. No, I was having a great conversation with my students, and I was learning a little more about sugar on the side, and it was a film from the U.S. too. So.
Well, no, it wasn't. It's
made
by an Australian documentarian.
Oh, that's right.
But he went to the US.
It was taking place
and
there.
analysed their sugar intake habits.
Yeah.
It's so freaking scary.
Too much soda. And I will say my parents never had... We didn't drink soda growing up, and I'm grateful for that.
I mean, they've seriously laid a foundation of health for you just by doing that.
Yeah.
It's something I'm trying to do with my kids, and I'm already... My daughter's turning 5 soon, and I'm having the battles, but I'll have the battles for sure.
Yeah.
It's so destructive to developing immune systems. It's a whole nother podcast.
While we're talking, you should all know that Shannon has a coconut water at his side. He's
it's full of
sipping that.
I just, with extra sugar added. Yeah, sorry, going off on a tangent, but tangents are all right, Greg.
Hey, I'm all for that.
Dude. Yeah. Now listen. So we were talking about high school, and can you maybe tell me, was there a particular teacher that really stood out for you? And I like asking this question because I had one at school, I'm now, a man, adult, and I still remember that person and their name and what they taught me, but I don't remember any of my other teachers, virtually zero, and I don't remember anything they taught me. So, did you have someone like that where they just really stood out for you and maybe made an impact?
I think I'll say that what made an impact on me was in high school. It's a group of teachers, but I just really resonated with English and social studies. And what's ironic about that is, in the States we're fond of this standardized testing. I was always quite good in mathematics naturally, but I didn't like mathematics. I generally didn't like science. I think they were presented in very abstract ways that had no meaning for me. Whereas, from a young age, social studies intrigued me. I used to read the newspaper my parents got, from an early age. I'd go through that cover to cover every day. And so even when I took, many people know the SAT, the standardized test that students take before college, but I did pretty poorly on the English component and really well on the math component. So all the experts might suggest I should have been an engineer or something mathematically based. But I remember also taking a test that looked at what we might be good at as adults. And for me, it said social studies teacher and farmer.
Really?
And I thought, yeah, they read me right. I know the standardized tests, I poo-poo them most of the time. And I will definitely say I'm not a fan of the SAT. I think it limits how we measure knowledge and wisdom into a very old standard and category. But the standardized test that, was reflecting our interests definitely picked up on the fact that I was interested in social questions and interested in probably environmental questions too.
So did you have a realization when you got the results and went, okay, I've learned something about myself as a person?
Well, in going back to a teacher who had an influence, there was someone in my late 20s, maybe I can mention his name later because he really comes to mind as still one of my heroes, but I don't remember who it was. One of my high school teachers did say, study what you love or do what you love. Don't go out there and take up the thing that is just, going to make you money. And so I listened to that and thought, I really love reading books, talking about social questions. I enjoy writing. I enjoy listening to the viewpoints of others. And so it was kind of a natural segue once I got to college. I just realized, hey, I love the English classes. I love literature. And then with my German roots, I wanted to take up the German language because I had done some of that in high school as well. And I still tell that to high school students today when they sometimes come into my classroom and they're, stressing about the future. I say it's simple.
Yeah, I've heard similar things, and you was just saying that before, and kind of since I've started the podcast, there's these recurring themes. I've talked about this before that just keep coming up, and one of them is to get out of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be a really common theme, for people. Don't be complacent.
Mm-hmm.
Keep moving out of your comfort zone, and another one is what you said in terms of that. Identify your passion
mm-hmm.
and your skills and talents,
mm-hmm.
and let that be your guide. And then interestingly, I was talking to Tim Fidgel the other week, and he made a really interesting point, and he said he kind of feels that when we're told to follow our passions, it's actually a rich person's luxury. Because he said, do you think your grandparents were able to follow their passions? And no, because they were just trying to put food on the table, right? And he was like, yeah, so it's kind of a little bit egotistical to say that, just go and follow your passions. It's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you've got mouths to feed, or I don't know, it just really resonated with me, and it goes in line with what you were just saying. So
I wonder, well, and also you said following skills and talents, and actually what I did was to not follow the natural talents. I went elsewhere and did not, do the math because I didn't really love math.
Yeah.
Until later in life, I found maybe
but you went to your
a new
interests.
approach. Went to my interests, and I think, Tim is a friend of both of ours, and I always appreciate what he says, and I think there's a lot of truth to what he's saying. But I also think, if I think of my grandparents, they were probably destined to be dairy farmers in the time they were growing up in. And my parents, the norm at their time was to what all of their friends did. They married at a pretty young age, and German Catholics, they had a lot of children. But did they all follow some passions within that? My father probably had it as part of his destiny, where he had to work. He had to be at the paper mill
6 kids
in order to feed 6 children. But he had passions outside of that, and
What were they? Polka.
there you go. Well, even today, I mean, my folks do have the means of being retired. They've been retired over 20 years, and
Nice.
they've had a good time, and they're snowbirds, so they spent time in Florida in the winter, and they stay in Minnesota in the summer. They've had grandchildren that they can dote upon, but a lot of friends that they've grown up with over the years. And yeah, they go polka dancing, play cards.
And they're happy.
Yeah, I think they're actually also very grateful. They have a strong spiritual foundation, and I think they're at a good place in life. They're both in their 80s, and yeah, I'm grateful that I still have them with me, and they're doing so well. They spent about 3 weeks with me last year in Hawaii, and yeah, so they still travel and get around, and they're doing well.
Yeah, I was just, as you were saying that, I was thinking about my parents, and they were they did pretty well. They were able to retire at a decent age, and they've just so gone the other way. Like my mother, she worked in a nursing home for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And my stepdad, he was in the military for 20, 30 years, and then he was a technician for a big company for years, and so worked their whole life, ticked all the boxes, laid a good foundation, a nice nest egg, and retired. And they actually then went really extreme. They sold their houses. They had 2 houses, and they sold them both, so they now don't have a house. And they bought an old school bus, turned it into a pretty pimping motorhome.
Wow.
That pulls a small car and a boat, and they've just literally been doing laps of Australia, I shit you not, for over 10 years. They've lived in this bus, and they now have no fixed address. And they often say to me, "Oh, that's all bullshit. What you're trying to do? Oh, what you want to own a house? Good on you. You're crazy." They've just gone full hippie. And they're like, "Yeah, you don't need to work. Whatever, don't work. I do need to work. They're like, don't believe what you're fed." I'm just wow. But they conform to that for their whole lives.
Yeah.
And have just now in their golden years just went, we messed up. I don't know if they're doing that because they've now got the luxury of being able to say those things, but I was just like, wow.
Well, it's nice for you. Sometimes, even when we're in our 40s and 50s, there's some parental pressure
They're
of
giving
what's
me this
over us, and
opposite
they're saying you're free, Shannon. So there you go.
They're saying spend time with your kids,
Yeah.
and your wife. Go surf. Go skate. Do what you're into, and don't be lazy. But yeah, you'll be right. Oh, the money will just come. I'm like, really? But maybe that. Yeah, they do what you do. Your parents do. They go line dancing around the country. They volunteer a lot. They've actually been helping the farmers in rural Australia who are drought stricken, and they'll actually they'll house sit a farm so the farmers can have a break and actually run their farm for them and look after and keep everything going, feeding the animals and whatever needs to be done, so farmers can have a holiday.
Awesome.
It's
what a great program.
Rad, yeah.
Yeah.
And then they've got a bit of a reputation amongst the farmers, so they're really sought after by all the farmers.
Well,
and they get no money, they just get accommodation, but they don't even need accommodation. It's really cool.
I see where you get some of your ideals from.
You
That's
think
nice.
so? I don't think I've actually formed my ideals. I think I'm having a midlife crisis.
Wow. You're still surfing and skating and doing good work at the school, and as I told you before this, I love this podcast. I think this is a good niche.
Thanks, bro.
It
gives me so much. I feel like I'm going to get emotional saying this, but it just fills me with so much joy. Wow, I didn't expect that. And it's just been a really unexpected gift. I get to spend some quality time with people.
Yeah. Well, and I bet there are members of people who are listening out there too who, one can hope some of the things we talk about has an influence or, can help them in some way. But I think biography work is great, and I think, in busy times, we often just don't take the time to talk to people. So it's nice on my end. It's a real honor that someone would ask and say, hey, I'm genuinely interested in your life story. And
I agree. And I feel like the microphones and the recorder and the process, because there's a process of, we had to communicate prior to this, and we talk about it, and hey, you got time? Yeah, I got time. So we actually make time, and then we create the situation for an in-depth conversation.
Yeah.
That these days I feel like is really being lost, especially in Australian culture. People aren't really sitting around and just getting to know one another as well as they used to, maybe. And unless it's for a lot of guys, unless it's at a pub or a bar drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
Which is just bullshit conversation, if you believe it. Like, if you ask me, like, it's just all, I don't know, a lot of just, I don't know, it's just not as sincere, even though at the time you feel like it is.
Right. So
I just like that it helps create a good context and with a bit of purpose. So anyway, so let's go back to you. Enough about me.
We can talk about both of us. I think it's a great opportunity for that.
So, did you transition straight from high school to university? Or did you have a little gap year?
I transitioned straight, and I think part of that, looking back, I do remember some social pressure. I had gone to the school with the Benedictine monks was a prep school.
Yeah.
And though I had some positive things to say, I'll be honest about my constructive things too, as I always am. I think they definitely promoted, we have 98% of our students going to college, and, they're going here, there, and everywhere. And, a lot of, as an educator, that a lot of schools pat themselves on the back that way. And as an adult and as an educator, I tend to value the freedom of the child, like go where, you feel you'll meet your destiny. And I don't think that is necessarily college for all of them. Sorry, I'm an educator and I said it. But I think there are so many great paths and things we can take up. And I'm a huge fan of the gap year. I think just as teachers, we need a break once in a while. I think students can take breaks. And so I celebrate the fact I think our current 12th grade class at Green School, about 75% of the students right now are looking at gap years. And some, it might not even be a gap year. It's just, I've talked to a couple of them. They said, I don't think university is necessarily my path. I see myself maybe in this or that niche. But for me, I think my parents did not go to college. I had a few older siblings that went. And because I had gone to a college prep school, it was kind of a next step, although I did have a couple of high school friends who were going to Arizona to dig for gold. Only my parents would remember that story. They definitely...
What do you mean dig for gold? Like, literally? I don't know. I heard Arizona's a desert.
Yeah, I don't fully know.
Or
and
dig for like a high-paying job.
Yeah, this one friend from high school, he was a sharp guy, not in school, but he was savvy. And today he's been an entrepreneur, and he's a very wealthy, independent businessman. I saw him a few years ago in Hawaii. He's doing very well, and I think he's found a nice niche for himself. And he does a lot of work in Asia with organic cleaning supplies. But at the time,
great,
in high school, he just said, I'm not going to do college, Our other friend from the baseball team, Gary, and he were going to go to Arizona, where he was convinced they had a new way of mining gold that hadn't been done before, and they were going to get rich. And I thought, as an 18-year-old, doesn't that sound kind of fun, just to run to Arizona and get rich?
Oh, yeah, it does. It's the way you describe it just sounds so easy.
Yeah, but
it's not.
Well, at that time, I think just my parents, through conversations with them and maybe for some people at school, and I had some friends going to the same college in Minnesota. So I made a big transition. I went from, a rural town to about an hour away. I went to Minneapolis, St. Paul, and went to school, and that was a big move for a country boy.
Yeah, it
and
would have been.
Was probably big enough, and
it's kind of a rite of passage for a country boy to move to the big city, right?
It definitely was, and it was a good 4 years. But I kind of went straight through, and as the biography mentioned, there was my junior year. I also took another step by living abroad in Germany and Austria for a year.
And how was that? How was those times?
Well, I hope we don't have too many Austrians listening, but it was honestly a really challenging year. And
Why?
I think it's good to talk
Why?
about the challenges. Vienna at the time, 1/3 of the population was over 65 years old.
No way.
Yeah, it was a very old city.
Old and rich?
Not so rich. Well, I mean, culturally, they had, Mozart and Beethoven, and one could go and, to the opera. And I think it opened some doors where I appreciated a lot of this music. And as I mentioned in the biography, some of the literature and philosophy. But there was part of me, too, that felt it was a gray year in Vienna. They were having a record cold, wet, rainy winter. And it just felt kind of grumpy to me. This would have been the mid to late 80s. And coming straight from Minnesota, I was probably being judgmental. I was certainly missing my friends a lot back home. I think at first I was lonely and homesick.
Yeah.
And, I learned the language, and it had its positive aspects, but I think similar to Australians, Americans tend to be pretty out there, big smile on our face, like, hello, how's it going? And that is not Viennese culture. They're a little bit compared often to the folks of Paris. So I just felt like it was difficult on many levels. I then did have a couple of high school friends who happened to be in Vienna at the time, too. So we became close and spent a lot of time together and developed some Austrian friends, and things got better, but it definitely had its difficult moments of, homesickness, and just, it was a big step across the pond from not having done any international travel to suddenly being away for almost a year. It was 11 months.
Were you disappointed in the level of polka dancing?
Never been asked that question before, but it's a great question. Oh, let me say this.
Was there polka dancing in Austria? I didn't even know.
Well, the year started with 2 months in rural Bavaria, which is southern Germany. Right. And Shannon, that felt like my hometown.
Did it?
That was great.
Yeah,
so for the first 2 months, the small town boy from Minnesota in small town Germany with big time polka and big glasses of beer. I was into that at the time.
I don't believe it.
Yeah. I wasn't always so disciplined. But it was I really enjoyed Bavaria. I really enjoyed the Bavarians. I really felt like I resonated with.
There we go again.
They tend to be quite outgoing and
there we go again.
Sense of humor. And then I got to the big city, Vienna. Not a big city kid, and I could handle St. Paul, but Vienna was just kind of cold.
Literally and metaphorically.
Yeah. So I don't mean it was all bad, and I discovered great coffee. Discovered
you're a coffee guy.
Some good food.
I've seen you with you're a coffee guy. I feel like most Americans are coffee people.
Yeah.
But they enjoy, in my opinion, just drinking crap coffee. Like percolated filter coffee, whereas in Australia we're all about our lattes and flat whites.
You guys are like me. I need the good coffee. In fact, I grew up on the percolated coffee and didn't drink it. Right. In fact, so I drank it when I got to Austria, and then I got back to the States and stopped drinking it. And it wasn't until my 30s when I was driving city bus and I needed the caffeine that I started drinking it. But I was also living in Oregon and in the Northwest. That's really where coffee culture kind of had its roots in the U.S. back in the 90s. Some might even say the 80s. But anyway, at that time I started to drink it, and I really came to appreciate good coffee. And as someone who knows me well, you know that I enjoy couple of really delicious cups every day.
You like the barley coffee?
I do. I like the barley coffee, and
what do you like about it? It's thick and like mud.
Thick. The taste.
It's literally a cup of mud, really. Come on.
Yeah, but we have found a connection with some people who, a local warung, which is a local shop here north of our village, and they get it from the Tabanan region, and we find it's definitely tangibly tastier and stronger,
so good.
bolder. But so it's if any of you drink Kopi Bali, it is not expensive and quite good, does the trick. And then I still like every day maybe an afternoon espresso just to lift the spirits a little bit.
Just to increase the levels of optimism. Jade and I, my wife, the other morning, it was like a tough morning. Kids were being hard and we're trying to get everyone out of the house, and it's a big mission making lunches because we're quite particular about what we want our kids to eat through the day, so that requires more effort. And, you know, Jade, she manages a lot of that. And then, and we're just like, and we're tired, and we couldn't even barely talk to each other, you know, like, it's just like, and I'm just like, you want to go get a coffee on the way to work? Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Go and get a coffee. Hey, darling. Oh, how are you? And literally after 2 sips, and we're just like, wow. Oh, I love you, babe. Oh, I love you too.
We're back.
Oh,
We're back.
Wow. Oh, what's your day like? You gonna have a good day? Yeah. I'm gonna have a good day. Yeah. Oh, hey, what are you doing for Christmas? Oh, we've got to buy our daughter a new bike. Da, 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 da. And it was like, I could not. It was actually quite scary. I mean, we were drug enabled. We were.
Well, the flavor might have its influence too.
Sorry, this is what I love about Bali. I'm just going to stop it right there. Greg and I are sitting in this amazing bamboo structure, and then a local village farmer, elderly farmer, walks past with probably like a huge bundle of rice on his head, and barefooted, walking on a very rough path, and he'd probably be in his 70s or 80s. And it's just, then I just have these moments of like, I'm not at home anymore.
He's, I'm guessing by the bundle, it looks like he's also going to feed his cow.
Oh, yep. Okay. That's a better analysis.
The bushel is right.
It's cow feed.
For his cow.
Sorry, it's not, I didn't, yeah, you're right.
Yep.
But anyway, it's just like, wow. And he just looks so fit.
Yes, great posture.
Posture, straight back. And that's, who knows how far he's walking. And it's just like, there's just this peace about the local farmers. I've just, I don't think I've seen it anywhere else in the world. I mean, you may have like in other parts of Asia, I don't know, but yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's incredible. It's really a gift for us to be, you know, our school's in a rural area. And so.
In the jungle.
And.
Semi-jungle. Yeah. Yeah, man. So we were talking about the, I've lost our train of thought.
Coffee.
Oh, I love coffee, yeah.
We love coffee.
Man, it works, dude. I swear it works. When you feel like you haven't slept in 4 years, it works.
Yeah, and you have young children like you, but I feel like I am much more disciplined regarding what I put in my body from when I was a young person, and coffee is my one. You know, I don't think it's terrible for you. It's not
bad at all.
Yeah, but I just find it's, I want to hang on to that one for a long time. Maybe forever.
I could drop some knowledge on you.
Please. You're the nutritionist.
Well, so I'm not a nutritionist, but I'm a health PE teacher. I feel like I have a responsibility to have some nutrition.
And you're looking
knowledge.
Good. It's in good shape.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah.
You know, try to keep the missus happy. But, yeah, coffee's a seed. People often say coffee beans, but then it's actually regarded as a seed. And the caffeine is actually an accelerator for whatever else you're having it with. So if you have a coffee with a lot of sugar, it'll just accelerate your body's ability to metabolize the sugar. And so when you get those coffee jitters, as we refer to, it's actually not from the caffeine, it's from what you had with it, which was the sugar. And it's just being like mainlined straight into your bloodstream.
Yeah.
And so, like, when you have a coffee with milk, like a latte, dairy milk gets metabolized as lactose, which gets processed like glucose in the blood, so you get an insulin response to that too. So that's what's being accelerated, and that's where the jitters come from. This is what I've read. I'm not an expert, but it sort of makes sense, because when I have a black coffee, no milk, no sugar, I don't get the jitters. I don't get all like antsy. A little bit. I just get a nice, like, get a good vibe going, you know.
Same. Maybe that's why I like the double espresso. It's just
you don't have milk or sugar, yeah.
Rarely. Once in a while I'll get a piccolo, but now that you've mentioned what you mentioned, I'll experiment with it. I love experimenting with food, and I think that's the best kind of nutrition science, is try some different things, because
it blows me out how people just don't take it serious, because it's like the fuel for your body, and it's just like, apart from breathing, it's the second most important thing you can do to your body. It's like breathing and eating, you know.
Oh, I thought you were going to say giving it coffee.
Sorry, third most.
Breathing and coffee.
Breathing and coffee. I mean, it's saved my marriage, let's be honest. Coffee. Just kidding. Yeah, man. So anyway, so you spent some time in Vienna and then in Germany and Bavaria, which is really cool. So what about your little stint in Jamaica? How was that?
Oh, it was amazing.
Yeah, why?
It was really good timing in my life. I had finished college, and I think had gone kind of straight through high school, college, no breaks. But I loved reggae music.
It's the best. I love reggae too.
Yeah, I grew up being a big fan. And it just so happened my university had this possibility for education students getting into teaching, to teach in Jamaica, in this rural area. And I jumped at it, having been in Europe. Didn't have a huge desire to go back to Europe, but the tropical culture, ocean, the reggae culture, I loved it. And
cool.
And it was a really good fit. And unfortunately, it was kind of a short stint, because I had student loans to get back to. But it was a very meaningful stint, which I referred to earlier, and I've gone back many times. It's been a place that I returned to and have made some close friends.
So you went back to the States and continued to teach in which area?
I went back to Minnesota and worked at first at this youth shelter with the Native American children, which led then to more full-time work in outdoor education with adjudicated young men in northern Minnesota, which was, for 3 years, I really lived up in the North Woods, but was still just a few hours from my parents and where I grew up. But really a great opportunity to do. We did group wilderness expeditions with the students as well as solos, and it offered me the opportunity to spend a lot of time, in the outdoors, both in the north central United States and then southern Canada.
Nice.
And we did trips right through the winter, so we did winter camping.
Yeah, nice.
And yeah, it was amazing, and the job afforded me a lot of vacation time, so I actually used that to see a lot more of the U.S. In those years as well.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
And did you travel across the country of U.S., would you say?
Yeah, I've been to pretty much every state except, I think, Alaska, Maine.
What do you stand out? What are your standout states?
Oh.
I've got one personally.
Yeah? What's yours?
Colorado.
Yeah, Colorado's amazing.
I lived there for 6 or 8 months, I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hands down probably one of the best times of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't even near the ocean.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Hawaii must be up there for you, though, too, yo?
I had my honeymoon in Hawaii.
Yeah. You spent a good chunk of time there, you said.
We were there for 6 weeks on the north, and we just shacked up on the North Shore for 6 weeks straight.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty good. So I guess, would Hawaii be your main... What would be a standout state for you, going cross-country?
Well, definitely Hawaii has... I know it well now, and I've spent a lot of years there, and with the connection I have with the ocean now, I frankly... I feel landlocked if I go back to most parts of the United States now. But I will say when I first saw the Rocky Mountains, that was pretty special, especially Utah, places like Zion National Park, Bryce Canyon. That was my first trip west, doing, some mountain biking. But I lived in northern New Mexico for a couple of winters when I was just kind of between jobs. And, I was working there too. But northern New Mexico is a pretty special place in terms of scenery. And then it has a lot of depth in terms of culture and the many people that have lived there for thousands of years. So that's special. I do love California and Oregon. I love in California. I have a brother who lives up in the mountains in the Sierra Nevadas.
Oh, wow.
And, you just have such diversity there between the ocean, the redwoods, the mountains, the glacial lakes, and then desert down below and hot springs. So it can be great. I did enjoy it.
So cool, man.
Yeah.
So cool. I love it. Yeah, I like California too, actually. It does have this magic to it. It's a full-on place, but it's still it's got this amazing sort of vibe about it. I see why so many people are attracted to it. But I also find, maybe I'm wrong here, but I feel like the Californians that I've met over the years just seem just a little bit more progressive in their thinking. And I seem to become very friendly with Californians when I meet them around the world. I just seem to connect and identify with them. Like there's a friend of mine, Lance, who I think you know as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's from Ventura, and just like old mate, like he's an old mate all of a sudden, like we've known each other for years, but he's just like, he wants to be Australian, and I'm like, and he tries to put it on an Australian accent all the time. I'm like, dude, you're dreaming. You're never going to get there.
He hasn't tried that one on me. Well,
he would be brave enough.
He knows I'd call him on it.
He would. You should.
But yeah, it's interesting. I find the East Coast of the U.S., where I have some family. Yeah. I enjoy spending time with family over there, but I don't resonate with the culture and the vibe, as you say, as much as the West Coast of the U.S. But even now with Hawaii and Bali, and, I've spent about 25 years spending a lot of time in Asia and Southeast Asia. The U.S. tends to have more of the frenetic vibe that the East Coast used to have. I spent this past May in California, and the Bay Area was just kind of, was happy to see an old friend and then happy to get out of there.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now listen, as I sit here with my smartphone, my iPhone, with my notes, that I use for my show notes, and it's a very useful tool for the podcast. I can do a lot with it.
I think I know where you're going with it.
Yeah, and I've actually been sitting here the whole time because I keep having to look at it, and I actually forgot to warn you before we started that I often say this to guests. I say, listen, throughout the podcast, I'll probably have my phone out. It's not because I'm checking Facebook or anything. I'm like using it for my show notes because I often write them on my laptop and airdrop them over.
Yeah, I can see you're looking at the questions you have for me, so don't worry. I won't.
Great.
I won't change.
As long as you know that. And I'm actually thinking, I wonder if Greg's like pissed off at me for doing that. As I sit here and look at your Nokia, which is awesome. And I've got a question for you, and I don't know how you feel about this. Like, are you tech phobic or tech resistant?
So tech phobic would mean I'm afraid of technology.
Yeah.
Tech resistant would mean I resist technology. I guess.
So it's conscious.
I actually am going to give a talk at Green School in about 3 weeks. I've challenged myself to do this because
awesome.
I want to challenge our definition of the word technology as an educator. And no shame on you, Shannon, but you're asking me probably more specifically about digital technologies. And I'm a proponent of 10,000 years of technology in education. I think, here at Green School, currently I'm teaching a couple classes. I'm teaching a comparative religion class, but they're giving me space in my schedule to make kites with the students.
Awesome.
And to talk about, how bodies are cremated in Bali, or even the technique or technology or art of how do we deal with the dead body at the moment when life ends. And for those of you that know Bali or have witnessed this, it's beautiful. And often in the West, we tend to just say, call the ambulance, get it out of here, go put it in a cold drawer. But they care for the body. So I guess what I want to try to advocate is a broader definition of this word technology, because I think we're actually collectively making a mistake if we say, do you reject technology? And we're talking about digital technology and maybe the technology of the last 20 years. And maybe even for our generation, that's arrogant for us to say that, because the fact is many of us are spending the majority of our lives on these devices. But is that taking away our ability, or maybe the ability of our students, to connect with these amazing technologies of our ancestors, whether it be metal smithing? I'm thinking of Bali in particular, because we do a lot of great things at school. You do permaculture. So just the act of planting, of saving seeds, of growing food, that's a technology. It's an ancient one.
It's a system.
And we don't want to lose it, but it is a technique. And one thing, you asked the question, so I could, I'll talk about this a bit more, but people can actually tune into my talk in a few weeks if they want to learn. But
are they going to record that?
Yeah.
What are they going to use to record it?
I don't know, but I do think it'll be at our Green School site where it's called the Spark Talk, so people could check this out. And so
they'll use digital technology to record that.
Definitely. And
then they will put it on the internet.
Yes. And
to promote it. And how do you feel about that?
Again, I'm not yet talking about the digital technologies.
Sorry.
I'd like to finish just with these other technologies of 10,000 years. Are we, do we ask our students when they graduate from school, how many of them can weave a basket? Is that important? Or because we don't maybe use those anymore, is it not important? Can they frame a building like this? One of the reasons I'm at Green School is we do actually do a lot of these things with our students. We try to build capacities so that they learn techniques. And, the word techna in ancient Greek meant art. So if we say technology, we're just saying the study of art. But what is art? And something I'll also point out is here in Bali, we're surrounded by the arts, aren't we? It's everywhere. Do you know they don't have a word for art?
I did not know that.
In the Balinese language. Now, why is that?
I didn't. Oh, yeah. Because maybe because it's just so ingrained in their lifestyle?
I don't know either, but it does seem to be a way of life here that art is just what you do to connect to the spirit realm, to the earth realm, and to your fellow humans. And whether we call it art or technique or a combination of the two, I just think we should celebrate our collective heritage of technology. And it doesn't mean we ignore the digital technologies, but I do think I want to challenge one other term. In education today, we talk a lot about computer literacy, digital literacy. All these kids they know how to work a phone better than I do. But are they tech savvy? What does that mean? And I think being at Green School, I'm interested in coining a term called information ecology. How can they see it as an environment?
Is that your term?
It is, but anyone can run with it as long as they have the spirit of what's behind it. So yeah, I haven't patented it, but yeah.
Well, what's the point you want to make with it?
The point is, with all of our technologies, we've gained some amazing capacities with technology in the last 200 years that have enabled us to do many things like, the automobile or the jet airplane, but they've created immense challenges too. And I think actually in the next 100 to 200 years, we might see some technologies where, we can't necessarily see it all as progress if it's trashing the planet and trashing us. And so how can we just make conscious choices? And one of my choices in not having Even the name smartphone I find is a little funny because I'm not sure they're making people smarter.
Not comfortable with that?
Well, it's a marketing name, but I don't feel like I'm any less smart than others because I don't carry a smartphone. I'm making some choices about how my friends and colleagues and students can communicate with me. I'm making some environmental choices perhaps by not having one, but
has it isolated you?
That's a great question because I would answer with a definitive yes. I think for a lot of people, I'm simply off the grid. And, maybe the Amish, where I'm from, who decided not to embrace electricity over 100 years ago, it isolated them. I don't feel like I'm a hermit who won't talk with people. I email with my parents. I email anyone who will email me, so I'm not off the digital realm. I just am trying to keep my screen time, to what I feel is a reasonable letter, at a level for me that's reasonable. And I will say I just studied library and information science to wrap my mind around this a little more. And yeah, I think there are a lot of issues with the digital world, like if we talk about information ecology, questions of privacy and your digital information. If you're part of Facebook or WhatsApp or Instagram or even Googling things, to be tech savvy, I would suggest in the digital age might be to choose having an encrypted email or to use a search engine that honors your privacy, or maybe even, as we do in the social justice movement, so we could maybe boycott Facebook if they're just selling our information to the, whatever authoritarian regime.
To people who want to sell us stuff.
Yeah, and I think that would be...
It drives consumerism.
That would be a form of being more tech savvy. And again, in my talk in a few weeks, I don't want to be prescriptive. I'm not saying this is how we should all, or you all need to throw away your cell phones. I think we all just need to make personal choices, and I'm making mine. I have a laptop and I have a Nokia, but without maybe going any further on this topic, because I'll talk about it later. I think as an educator, I don't think our students are tech savvy. I think they're generally tech addicted, and part of being tech savvy would then be, do they have capacities of working with technologies from the last 10,000 years? And then regarding the digital technologies, are they actually very conscious of that realm and maybe how they can protect themselves? And also, these things are quite addictive. So we know being around young people or even with ourselves.
They're made that way.
Yeah, and I'm like a moth to the light, which is another reason I don't choose to have all the bells and whistles, because I'm just afraid I'd be on it too often.
You're an adult who's conscious enough to realize that, whereas teenagers, they're not conscious enough to realize that they're addicted, or they're not conscious enough to know that they are attracted to the bright light. They're not breaking it down that far,
and they haven't grown up really without it, so
they're born into it.
Yeah, I would just add, at Green School, one thing that's changed since I was here last time is the students don't have the cell phone during the day. We ask them to turn it in.
That's one of the best things.
It's made a big difference. I would challenge educators listening to this, because I actually think one of the easiest things as an educator today is say, pull out your laptops. And
it is. It's
like a babysitter. If you're a parent, they'll stare into that light and be... you'll have a quiet classroom.
It's true.
But I think we can use it as a tool too. And I use, as a social studies teacher, I just taught an information ecology class, and, they have access. I love having access to news sources from all over the world, and I'm still refining that. So I use it as that kind of tool.
It sounds like you've created a subject that teaches young people how to consume their technology. And when you keep using the term tech savvy, the way I personally interpret that term is that it is your ability to use technology to your benefit. So if you are addicted to it and using it too much, well, it's not to your benefit, whether it be professionally, personally, physically, mentally. And I really feel that we're at the point where we need to have, I know they're trying to do it in Australia, but we need to have a subject or courses on what you're saying, how to consume your digital technology, how to use it, how to make informed decisions around it, and how to manage it.
Yeah.
And in Australia, I must admit, the PDHPE programs at the high schools are working towards that for sure.
That's great.
You know, we talk about progressive education, and I am going to give a plug to the Australian curriculum, especially in New South Wales. I feel like it is progressive, and it is. It's quite in tune with what the needs of young people are.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is, I think, my 15th year of teaching. And I've been around long enough now to, when I first started teaching, students didn't really have mobile phones at school and if they did, it was what you've got, is a Nokia.
Yeah.
And I remember the biggest problem we had, and everyone was up in arms about it, was text messaging. But thing is, the way they text message was very slow because they had to use that to keep pressing the same button 3 times, which I'm guessing that you have to do.
I don't really text with that thing.
Of course you don't. Of course you don't. Of course. But then the other thing was there used to be this game on Nokia called Snake. And it's like the most basic format game. It's like a game of Pac-Man. So I guess almost regarded as primitive by tech standards these days. And the kids, there's this little snake that would go around and eat little pixels, It was hilarious. And okay, don't play Snake, put your phone away, and we'd be confiscating phones. But then I've watched it evolve into, I was around when, when I say that, it sounds so old. But then when Facebook really hit, I know Facebook was released in 2005, but it didn't really hit Australia hard till around 2007, where, you could actually, the smartphone was getting better and you could get an app on your phone and just hit Facebook. So then I watched, teenagers using this technology, the smartphones, and all of a sudden everyone had one, and all of a sudden it went from playing Snake to checking Facebook. Then it went to playing Snake to students filming punch-ups in the playground and posting them on Facebook or YouTube and glorifying violence. And then I also got to witness, unfortunately, horrendous cyberbullying through social media platforms in the school setting. To where we are now, when I've actually come across students in Australia and here who are actually anti-social media. So I feel like it's going full circle, and the students are becoming savvy enough to realise that it is harming them. They're learning how to use it. They're becoming more informed and more educated, and it's becoming very obvious that digital technology, can be very bad for your health. But it wasn't like that when it first came out. In fact, we were encouraged by our schools in Australia. We had this thing for a while called bring your own device. So they're encouraging kids to bring their own device so we could use it as an educational tool. And then it just as a teacher, it just got so hard. I just felt like all I was doing was managing digital technology problems. Either the Wi-Fi wasn't working, the kid's battery was out, there's no battery left, or there was a cyberbullying issue. And then the same with laptops. Our Australian government rolled out billions of dollars, I think, to give every kid in New South Wales schools a free laptop. I don't know if you heard about that. Every single kid got given a laptop. And it was just a debacle. The things were slow. They didn't function. You couldn't engage the kids. And the first thing they did was upload their favourite games onto them. Anyway, there's my rant.
Yeah, and I hope mine doesn't sound like a rant because, like I said, I actually use laptops in class, particularly when the students do research. But I do find they are habitual, and usually the first thing I say in class is close your laptop. And often the questions I ask, try to challenge myself to ask questions that don't require research. They require students to maybe upload rather than download information. But yeah, enough about that. I do think there's a lot more work that can be done in exploring the environment of information and where it's at right now, and how we can maybe clean it up a little bit, make it more hygienic. And
I love how diplomatic you're trying to say. You are. I can see you're really not allowing yourself to be negative about it.
Well, there's a language to it too, and I'm trying to speak very exactly. I'm fascinated, since I'm an English teacher as well as a social studies teacher, that sometimes the words we use, and I find words like technology or smartphones, or these automatically can categorize things, or you're anti-tech, or you're a Luddite, or you don't do technology. And I want to say, hey, I'm maybe the biggest promoter of technology in education. It's just that it's got to be more than digital technology.
Can you go back to that Latin term? Is it technica?
Yeah, just techna.
Techna.
And then ology, of course,
what does
means
it mean again?
Study of. From the Greek, it just means art. But I find the word art, even as we describe it in the West, has maybe connotations, because we often think of it as something you hang on the wall, whereas I think art here in Bali has a much more practical and even spiritual component to it, that they do their arts not just to hang it on the wall.
Are you saying there's no spirituality in using a handheld device?
No, I'll put that back on you. Are you saying that?
For some people, maybe.
I mean, I think it's to communicate with our loved ones. These things, they can have their value, but I just received a beautiful letter from my father too. There are a lot of ways we can communicate. Handwritten. It made it all the way here to me in Bali.
More profound than an email.
I appreciate the emails with my parents, the Skypes. I don't Snapchat with my nieces and nephews. In fact, I'm not real into taking pictures of myself. The pictures Shannon's sharing from this podcast are like my collection of the last 10 years. But
really?
Yeah.
There's 4 of them.
My wife and I just aren't that into photos. We're not that,
Why?
That's what it is. Well, maybe we don't have children, so we're...
Or is it because you just want to enjoy the moment and you don't want to spend that time fumbling for a camera?
That might be something else, yeah. Who knows? I haven't thought about it that deeply, but we're just not big photography people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Greg, mate, it's for me, you're tapping into a period of my life I went through probably about 2 years ago. I'd actually stopped. I'd disconnected from technology from social media for about 2 years. So I deleted my Facebook account, Instagram, all that. I didn't have for 2 years. And it was when my daughter was first born, because I had a moment. I was holding her when she was about 3 months old. And I was like her in one hand and then my phone in the other. And I'm checking Facebook, and I looked at her and I looked at the phone. I was like, this is wrong. And so I did. I didn't use it for like almost 2 years or longer, for those exact same reasons. So I wasn't taking photos, wasn't posting anything. But I've actually gone the other way again. But this time it is definitely conscious, and it's because of the podcast. I want to promote the podcast. I want hopefully to spread some good knowledge and good wisdom, and just good stuff into the world, and be someone that's trying to do that, because there's other people who are doing it anyway.
Yeah. And
I'm like, well, if they're doing it and I don't really identify with what they're doing and how they're doing it and the message they're conveying, well, you know what? Fuck them. I'm going to do the same thing, but it's going to be my view on it, and, hopefully it's a nice thing.
And I hope that, I use digital technology quite a bit in my life, both for my work and for my interest in the social sciences and current events. And I will say, actually, social media, I think it's a paradoxical thing, but I think there's a political awakening currently in the United States, and I see a lot of young people taking it up, and I think much of that is a product of social media. Now, the paradox comes with privacy and some of those things that I don't know that young people are always aware of. Governments can turn authoritarian, dictatorial pretty quickly, and everything we put out in that realm is very public, and maybe it doesn't have to be. I think that's Edward Snowden's point, is that
That's amazing.
we can utilize this technology without selling our souls to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
And that we can regulate some of these massively monopolistic digital social medias as well as other medias. I think the Googles, Facebooks, Amazons, I think it would behoove us to understand that information environment and then to have more discussions about how we can maybe make it better.
I'm listening to what you're saying, and sometimes I just feel really scared, and I feel overwhelmed by it. It just feels like the problem's too big.
Mm.
But whenever I get those thoughts now, I just hone it back into, well, okay, what can I personally control? What can I control?
Mm-hmm.
And I can only control what I can control, and that's my business and doing things the best I can. But it is good to get the discussion going and which is what you're doing. And I don't want to pry any more out of you about your talk, because I'm super excited about it, and I'm super proud of you for actually putting your hand up to do that.
Good. I'm frankly a little nervous about it because I do often find the label is there, and
What label?
Like a Luddite or anti-technology.
Do you feel that? Have you been receiving that vibe off people? I mean, I think I've done it to you a few times. Like, oh, what, you missed that group WhatsApp message again, Greg?
Yeah.
And people laugh at you about it, but it's always in a nice way, a joking way. But it still must be a little bit down-putting.
Well, I think I just feel like it's this talk would be an opportunity for me to sort of challenge the idea of what is anti-technology and what might it mean for us to redefine not only just technology, but what it means to be pro-technology, tech-savvy, and how...
So you think it's more getting the terms right?
I find language really... I find this in the political sphere, that we can be trapped by language. It can really shape our social pictures. And that's getting back to teaching. I just feel it's a great gift to be a literacy and a social studies teacher. And it's a great personal challenge because it forces me to look at maybe habits of language that I use. So it's not, we could go beyond technology with this, but and having studied other languages, I studied German and I'm currently working on my Indonesian, but that part's fascinating as you speak good Indonesian.
Thanks, bro.
It's fun to play with that and to see how certain words might, pigeonhole.
Prevents dementia as well.
Yeah.
Apparently,
yeah.
When you learn multiple languages.
Mm.
And
Gamelan does that too, so we might have to recruit you.
Really? I'm keen. There's so many things I'd love to get involved in, but I just really feel like there's not a minute of my day / life. I cannot fit anything else in. So I've had to prioritize. I'd really like to skateboard more.
Yeah.
But I'm only able to do it once a week, tops, because of my lifestyle at the moment. But the beauty of being an educator, and let's be pragmatic here, it allows us these gaps of time regularly, holiday breaks, to then recalibrate, tap back into ourselves and our passion, because I think you need it, because you do give so much of yourself personally, and your character and your cognitive strength, because you're constantly, really, because I'm getting actually more serious about education and the influence it can have on kids as I get older. Mm-hmm. So I've got this thing, and I remember when my first head teacher ever said to me, he said, just remember, if I teach you nothing else, every single time you are up in front of a group of students, you take that dead serious, because they are taking every single thing in, whether it's what you say or what you do or what you wear or how you behave. They are taking it in, and I really feel like it is a huge responsibility. So sometimes you are teaching kids things that you don't even realize you're teaching them.
Yeah. And
it could just be in the fact that you decided to not give a crap about having a shave this morning because you were too lazy. Yeah. Well, I know that's probably a bad example, but you get what I'm saying.
Definitely.
I think we have a very important role to play in shaping and molding.
I do, and I know I've told myself I'll never be one of those grumpy teachers. Like if I'm feeling I need a break, I need to take a break. You'd asked earlier about a teacher that had an influence on us. I haven't mentioned yet here, but I did work in Waldorf schools or Steiner schools for 16 years, and
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm very. I definitely resonate with Rudolf Steiner, the founder of those schools, and what I would call practical idealism. But the teacher I had, Willy Mueller, a Swiss man who's no longer alive, but he described the classroom as we are like priests, and you need to come in and be prepared, like it's a ceremony, and it's okay to be nervous. And one thing, I still get nervous before going into a classroom, after all these years and teaching well, and I actually want to keep that. I think it just means I want to get this right, and I want to, meet them where they're at and adapt to it rather than just to, paste a lesson. So yeah, I definitely want to care as I do it, and I would just say of all the teachers I've had, Willie, I think one of the reasons he had an influence is just because he was already probably in his 70s or 80s when I had him as a teacher, but he was obviously someone who continued to work on himself. And of all the things, I think I'm in my 50s now, and I've got a lot of work still to do. Working on the self is a lifetime journey, and teaching is great because we learn a lot as we do it, but it's amazing to be around people like that we can really look up to.
I love that you said that.
Yeah.
That you got to keep working on yourself. I mean, it's in all aspects of your life, really. And it just sort of never ends.
Right.
One of my biggest teacher mentors as a teacher myself in recent years was this lady. Her name's Cheryl Burling. Mm-hmm. And if she hears this, I hope she does. She's always just, I really connected with her, and she was just a firecracker of a woman, just always busy, but always excited and had a smile on her face. And then she retired, and she was still stoked on teaching. And I said, and often you see these older teachers retire, and they can be pretty bitter and twisted, or just completely exhausted. And with her, I did not get that vibe at all. She was excited. She's like, yeah, me and my husband, she's into cycling, we're going to go over to Europe, and we're going to cycle around Europe now. And and I said, what's the key? And she achieved some amazing things in education and put some programs in place that are still being implemented. And I said, what's the key to staying so fresh in this profession? And she said, every 5 years I reinvented myself. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, I'd either change jobs, and if I didn't change schools, I would change my role in the school, or I'd create a new program and try to initiate it. And I just didn't stay stagnant. And
Yeah.
And I just loved it, and that stuck with me, I mean, I'm a trained PE teacher, really. I mean, I have a degree in education, specialising in PDHPE, but who says I can't learn how to teach literacy, or put a program in place where students learn about audio technology.
Teach them how to make their own podcast.
Teach them how to spread information and interview people. I'm still learning myself, but when I started, especially the podcast, I had no knowledge. I just was like, I want to do it. Okay, what do I have to do? I mean, I think the first thing was okay, I'll Google what sort of microphone I get, what's a good interview technique? So I spent 3 months just doing that before I even started.
That's great.
Yeah, man. So I love that you said that about your mentor said the same thing. And
I would agree, based on my experience, encourage other teachers out there, take up a new class or subject the next year, or maybe, take on an administrative role, whatever it might be. It might mean taking a break. I know, and we talked about that before the podcast, but for me, that's come about every 7 or 8 years as just kind of a natural progression. And again, maybe I'm not a rich man, but maybe I've had a comfortable enough life where I can do that. Not everyone can, but it's been good for me. Those breaks, it's almost like surfing when you come up for a breath. And then
how do you go, once you've done that, how do you go back into the job afterwards?
Enthusiastically.
There you go.
Happy.
Fresh.
And
Inspired.
ready to roll. And, in every case, I've actually taken something up. I might surf a lot twice a day like I did the last 2 years, but I also maybe took up some studies, lived into some questions I had related to something I could teach. So, yeah.
So cool, bro.
Yeah.
And so, I just want to quickly go back to, you sort of, your last port of call was Hawaii, where you said you were living on Oahu.
Yeah. My wife and I.
South Oahu?
Southeast, yes.
South Shore?
South Shore.
And teaching at a school there. And
I was at a school there from 2000 to about 2016. And then I came to Green School in 2016, was here a year, and then I was back on Oahu the last 2 years.
And now back to Bali.
Back here. And just.
So what prompted that to and fro?
Well, my wife, Kaudi, is a kindergarten teacher, also within the Waldorf or Steiner school movement. And when we were here the first time, she loved Bali, but I think found herself missing her job, but also our Gamelan groups. We play in 2 different Balinese Gamelan groups on Oahu. We play in a group here too, but she was missing that, and I had an opportunity presented to me to a fellowship at the university to continue working with Indonesian language. And so we just decided it was a good move, but after 2 years on Oahu, her job had some twists and turns where she thought a sabbatical for her might be nice. And when Green School had a job that fit me perfectly, the stars were aligned again for this. And it's felt right with every move we've done. You just need to live into it over a time and ask if it's the right thing. And right now it's the right thing. And, we have a foot in Bali and a foot on Oahu, and those are probably our 2 worlds for the foreseeable future.
So what's next?
One day at a time. I'm sure enjoying Bali right now. Yeah.
Nice,
what's next is the weekend that we get to work with you.
Thanks, brother.
For at least another year, and get to soak up Bali. And it's a learning journey, but it's fun. I find we're in a great setting here, and I'm just grateful every day.
You seem super content. And is it that one day at a time philosophy that helps with that?
Maybe. I've certainly, I don't know that I've talked about it on, here, but I've been blindsided by a few things in my life, and there have been some real challenges. I do think positivity, equanimity, perspective are good values to try to hold and to look at what happens to us and say, how can I respond to this in a constructive way? And maybe is there, a deeper message to it that maybe, a change is needed? I think those dynamics are always there. And so I think one thing that helps is I'm at an age now too where I look at some of those things in life that have blindsided me, and sometimes those, the challenge has led to new opportunities too. I know I was at the same job for 16 years on Oahu, and was kind of surprised by some things that happened at school. And without going into details, in looking back, maybe I was too comfortable. I was, love my life in Hawaii, I love where we live, loved surfing, but the difficulties that I encountered then really opened the door to be here at Green School and in Bali, and have opened some new doors. So, the curse can often be a blessing as well.
Yeah. Those philosophies you were speaking of, do you feel that they were born through dealing with adversity and suffering? Because I've found that, it's cliche, but the best lessons I've learned are through suffering and when there's turmoil sometimes, and that when you've got nothing else to cling on to and you need to devise ways to maybe manage or even cope. It really helps when you start to look at the bigger picture and concentrate on, well, what is really important here. And, and I talk about this a lot with friends, but all we really have is right now. We could walk out of this beautiful structure here in the jungle and an earthquake could happen, and who knows, and it's that whole philosophy of trying to stay present, and you start getting caught up in the what ifs and what was or I wish. I think it can be really destructive personally.
I think for me, in comparing myself to a lot of other people, I think I've actually had a pretty easy life. Like I said, okay, I've been blindsided by a few things, but I think one thing that has really helped me...
But that could be perspective, Greg.
It might be. Yeah, you're right. But I think actually one thing that helps me a lot is I think at this age I do have sort of a cosmology or philosophy, a belief system. There goes the gecko in Bali. That's significant when the gecko chimes in. And I actually want to give a nod to Bali here, but I believe we come from spiritual origins, and I do believe we've been here before. So the ideas of reincarnation, karma, the karma we encounter in life, that helps me get perspective.
Gotcha. That
maybe I need to redeem some things that are not even just from this lifetime. And I believe these things very deeply. And yeah, so some of that came through the philosophy behind the Waldorf training, Rudolf Steiner's philosophy. I really resonate with that and appreciate that, as well as the time I had in India studying Hinduism and the time I've had in Bali.
Because I was going to ask you that. When did you start to develop or get on that spiritual journey? So it wasn't from Catholicism, was it? Do you think that could be the foundation of your spirituality?
I think it had an influence, but I do remember. Can I ask, how are we doing on time? We're at about...
Bro, it's been epic. It's been an hour and 41 minutes.
Holy cow, are we over time or we've got a couple more?
There's no such thing as time.
All right. Yeah, well.
If we're getting philosophical.
Oh, we are.
I don't like to set a time limit, but
okay.
You can talk for as long as you want. But what happens is my bladder sets a time limit.
All right.
I'm busting.
Why don't you go take a pee and I'll keep talking? I've got something I can say. Yeah, I've got...
Well, this isn't the first time this has happened, and there's two ways we go. I could pause it. That's the first option. Boring.
No.
Or second option is I can go and do a piss, and you can talk about whatever you want.
All right. I've got 2 or 3 minutes, if that's how long the pee is. And just go far enough away. I don't want you to drown me out.
It'll ruin the audio. Okay, I'm going.
All right. So there he goes. I guess what I would say to that, to Shannon's question, is I think my Catholic upbringing had a positive influence, but I remember from a very early age having an issue with the way heaven and hell were presented, and that it was kind of black and white, that you either went to the good place or the bad place. And I rejected that. Some people don't believe this, but I actually have a tangible memory from 2nd grade thinking, no, that's not how God works. So, but there were many other elements of my Catholic upbringing that were great and resonated. But as an adult, I think one thing that had a big influence was going to Jamaica. And after a very strong hurricane, when I was teaching there, we were without electricity or running water for many months. And I just think being up in the mountains and being close to the stars, I think I called myself an atheist before I went there, but I began to watch the cycles of nature. And of course, we were very connected to nature there, and very impressed with how the world was operating. And so without naming it, I think that brought an element of faith back, as did when I returned home and worked with the Ojibwe and saw how they saw the spirit in everything. He's back. So, Shannon, it's been seamless. And then
What did I miss?
I've talked about Catholic upbringing, and then Jamaica, and then working with the Ojibwe, and how those all influenced maybe a spiritual point of view, or how I transitioned kind of from almost atheism to not really espousing any religion or specific belief, but just being more open. And
Dude, keep going. Keep going.
All right. So in my 20s, again, I lived in the woods, and I think just a connection to nature was a great gift. And yeah, it was my late 20s where I decided to begin practicing meditation. I guess I discovered that through Hatha Yoga, which was helping me through kind of a stressful job. I did that at the end of every day. And so I actually met Yogananda's path, and as a form of meditation, and I just spent a year of what we'd call sadhana in India, where kind of on your own practice meditation. I didn't know that's what it was.
You didn't work for a year?
No, I
meditated for a year.
Well, I didn't just meditate for a year, and I would say to anyone that, I could say I tried to start learning meditation, and mostly when I did that, I sat and watched kind of a pretty busy mind jump around.
Yeah. So that's what happens to me.
We can call it meditation, but I would say, I haven't spent a lifetime. My spiritual path currently, I resonate more with definitely trying to discipline the mind and the thinking and the whole being, but it's not necessarily...
It's a daily practice for you?
Yeah, and it's not an hour of sitting in the morning or evening or something like that. It's more... I'm in the hammock for every evening, and that actually is a place where one can work on training the mind and focus and all that. So, but it's taken its own twists and turns, and maybe that aspect is personal, but those are some of the influences I've had that have helped me to have the basic cosmology that I've mentioned, that I feel like it's such a gift being here in Bali, because it's so ingrained deeply in the culture here that people strive to balance their relationship with the spiritual world, with their fellow humans, and with the earth. And right there, that's the ideal I can live by, and try to find that balance within myself and in my work.
Yeah.
And so it's a real gift to be around people who are doing that every day, and who've been part of a tradition that's been trying to embody that for generations.
And they just live it. They live it, literally. And I'm just listening to what you're saying, and I have so many I've never had so many conversations with people about spirituality since I've moved to Bali.
Bali will do that. Tends to pull people in.
As cliche as it sounds, but it's just another really common theme. And going back to the meditation, I've tried to meditate. I've done yoga for years, and that noisy mind, that mind chatter, it can be heavy, And I've actually, in the last year or so, really found a technique that helps me with the mind chatter. And it's by this crazy Dutch guy called Wim Hof. And he has these breathing techniques where you're actually breathing and then you hold your breath. And I can get to these deep levels of meditation while I'm holding my breath through his breathing techniques, and then you hold your breath, and I go through this period. I can, at one stage, I actually held my breath for 4 minutes. I was really into it, but I'm now back down to around 2.5 minutes. But that 2.5 minutes just becomes so zen, and I just go to this place where I've never experienced before. It's almost, it's like addictive. It's like a drug. And the struggle, then the struggle starts, in the last part of it, your body starts convulsing, and then this philosophy of trying to find peace in the struggle. It's pretty applicable to your life, So that's been really profound for me, more than all the vinyasa classes and Ashtanga, and I was a Bikram yoga guy for ages there, which is also really cool. I love Bikram. In terms of an open eye meditation. But anyway,
I do think even just as a teacher, meditating on a student or on what you might bring to a class, what's needed, asking a question and then asking it again in the morning after you wake up. I know I tend to come to a very peaceful place through ocean exercise. So that's a real gift for me. Stand-up paddling is really a great place. But I think just, whatever people have as a path, bless them for having a path. But I think getting back to thinking positive, and then what's your big picture? Where do we come from? What's our reason for being here? And how can we, as the Balinese would say, how do you find your dharma? What's your destiny, your duty? What's your gift to the world? And I think we all have that. So we're here for a reason, and the challenges are there for a reason too, I think.
Bro, I kind of feel like that's a good way to end.
Yeah.
Like, what a nice message to end on.
Yeah.
You happy with that?
I am. I do wish you would have mentioned you had to pee about, an hour earlier.
I did. I held it for an hour. I was meditating. I was finding peace in the struggle.
Well, good work.
Thanks, bro.
I didn't even notice it on your face.
Yeah,
so.
Thanks, man.
Good work.
Man, look, go. You go.
I just want to say thank you again.
Oh,
I
dude.
really think this is a nice forum, and you've done the same thing with some good friends of mine. But I think for a lot of us to have a forum to share, it's a real honor, and it's a nice gesture on your part. I think it's a gift,
Thanks,
not only for the listeners but for the person being interviewed.
You think so?
It is for me. Thank you.
Well, you want to hear something funny? Every time I do one now, I often get messages from that person's wife. And I even got an email from someone's mother saying, and then I had another guest say that their father reached out to them afterwards, and he hasn't really spoke to his father in years, and he said his father listened to the podcast and was so proud of his son. Like, I was just like, these are little things I didn't expect, and so it's actually profound for the significant other, not always, and but there's a couple of examples, and those things keep me going with it. I just love it, bro.
Oh, keep it going. I think this is, speaking of finding your dharma, this fits you very well. You're good at it, and it's a gift for all involved.
Man. Thanks, that's so nice of you.
Yeah.
And again, I'll just, I just want to say thank you for being on, and I really do mean it when I say that you are that guy that enters a room and makes the whole room feel at peace. And that's sincere when I say that. And I'm just so stoked that I met you, and I look forward to having many more conversations off mic. Okay, because we don't necessarily just have to have a microphone, and I hope people realize that sometimes make time just to have a chat. It's rad. You feel so good afterwards.
Yeah. My one goal with my whoops.
Keep going.
Wait there.
I've pulled the mic out. There you go.
There we are.
Actually, I didn't pull the mic out. It's just our headphones.
I think Shannon knew where I was going with this, so he might have pulled it. But I have a goal to get him stand-up paddling with me, and he says that's against his moral values and religious ideals.
Would.
So, but
I would, but I've just got too much integrity.
Yeah, he might have to wait till he's over 70.
Over 70 kilos.
I think that's what we should end it on.
All right, bro. High five.
Okay.
Love your work.
Yeah, love you too. Thanks, bro.
Thanks for being on, bro.
You know it. Great.